All right, so the firestorm is heating up in the wake of the New York Times hiring of Sarah Jeong, a tech reporter with a history of anti-white tweets. Back with me now, Matt Lewis, Simone Sanders, and Ying Ma. Simone, you were saying you want to respond to Matt?
Yeah, I think Matt brings up an important point about the media and why it is so important that the way folks talk about this quote-unquote issue of Sarah, her tweets in the New York Times, is extremely important in the media. Because again, without any context, if you are not providing the full picture, just reading some of the articles that have been written over the last 24 hours, or even seeing some of the segments on cable news, you would think that Sarah is just a flaming anti-white, person, and that's just not true. I think we have to. There's just a fuller and deeper conversation.
But she did something really silly. But let's be honest.
She did do something silly. I said that up top, Don. I said,
but let me read her statement and then let you go on. Let me read her statement and then I'll get more from you. This is a New York Times, not her statement, the New York Times statement. It says her journalism and the fact that she is a young Asian woman have made her the subject of frequent online harassment. For a period of time, she responded to the harassment by imitating the rhetoric of her harassers. She sees now that this approach only served to feed the vitriol that we too often see on social media. She regrets it, and the Times does not condone it. So, I
want to be clear. I'm not defending the fact that I'm not defending it, but what I am saying is
just because someone said something terrible about you on social media does not mean you have to respond. You should go through my social media feed, and I never respond. Everyone says, I can't believe that stuff is on there. I don't care. I'm not racist, so I'm not going to be drawn into it by responding to a stupid bigot on social media. And if I did, guess what? CNN would fire me.
Perhaps. I agree with you. I don't respond to the trolls either, but all I'm saying is for instance, the assertion that because Sarah referred to white people in her tweets, she is somehow now against all white people, when we all know that a lot of times
I don't think
when
that's
folks...
the point. That's not the point that she's against all white people. It sounds like you're making an excuse for someone who actually did something that is bigoted.
Don, I'm trying to figure out why you feel that way. I literally said that it is not okay, that I wouldn't have written, that I don't want, that no one should write things that they don't want ending up on the front page of the New York Times or anywhere else. I wrote that it was silly. I said that I wouldn't have said that.
But the point that she's not bigoted against all white people, that's not the point,
But I think it's important, Don, because that's what everybody's saying.
Okay.
Conservative websites, not even conservative, because I don't want to say that, because I have really great conservative friends, but right-wing websites, right-wing publications, and folks that identify with the white supremacist ideology are currently online spreading this.
Okay, I got you.
Everywhere.
There are two other people on the panel. You and I, we'll fight on text message after the show. You were wrong, Don. No, you were wrong, Simone. So, you want to respond? You want to respond to that? Ying, do you want to respond to that?
So I think all this hemming and hawing about whether this is racist or not, and oh my gosh, can this woman say this and not hate all white people? I mean, I looked at a lot of her tweets, and I said earlier that I don't think she feels that way about all white people, but I do think that one of the reasons that Donald Trump won was because he rejected all of this hemming and hawing. He rejected all of this identity politics. He rejected that it was okay for a young woman educated at Harvard, one of our elite institutions, to run around talking nasty things about an entire group of people of a particular race.
Donald Trump was hateful. I'm sorry, but Donald Trump was hateful. Donald Trump literally said
Donald Trump is an equal opportunity offender.
Donald Trump said that a judge of Mexican descent could not do his job because he was of Mexican descent.
And he would offend people of all colors, but not because of their race. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Actually, what I was saying earlier was that the sad state of identity politics makes it not okay for us to talk about race. And so when we talk about border security, inherently, if we want tougher border security, you're anti-Hispanic. When we talk about...
What do you mean identity politics, it makes us not... It's not okay to talk about race?
Actually, well, the reason why this young woman has spent couple of years, actually I think it was 3 years, on Twitter practically all the time saying nasty things about white people, her anti-white comments. Where do you think she gets that from?
So you think because of identity politics, let me ask you, do you think because of identity politics that when I bring up subjects like this and I talk about race on this show, that people call me a race baiter, that's because of identity politics?
I don't think think there's anything wrong with talking about race, Don. What I do believe is that identity politics has suffocated our public discourse, and that it has made it impossible for people to see beyond
Matt,
race.
I've got to get you in a last word, and we're over. So if I'll let you.
I'll just say quickly. I think that for a lot of Americans, we've had a very liberal idea that we should have a colorblind society. And for a long time, a lot of white Americans didn't even think of themselves as white, actually. Yeah. And what's happened is there's been a rise of race consciousness. And I think the alt-right has actually been behind that. They want white people to feel like a tribe. And for a long time, white people didn't really feel that way. A lot of white people, most white people. And I think that what happened here, what this journalist did at the New York Times, is actually help the alt-right. To help white people start to feel like that they're a tribe under attack and that they need to stick together. I think that's very unproductive.
You know that's false. I've got to go. You know that's false. And this whole idea about a colorblind society
I don't like the idea.
Is really silly. The word colorblind, you want people to be able to see your color. You want people to be able to know what religion you are.
But Don, I want you to judge me. I want you to judge me as a person, as an individual, not as a...
You want people to be able to see
I'm a black woman,
individual
I want people
attributes,
to see that I'm a black woman.
And that it's okay to be different, and that I don't want people to look at me and think that I'm just some blank person on the screen or some blank person in person. Can you put them back up on the screen yet? I'm not done with them yet.
White people this, white people that, that's generalizing.
Yeah. Okay, we got to go. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. That word. You say these tweets are not racist.
No, I don't think Sarah's tweets are racist. Look, first of all, I think that it's important to note that these tweets were dug up by a right-wing, it's not even conservative, it was a right-wingers, people that identify with the white supremacist ideology, and they were taken out of context. Now, that being said, I subscribe to the notion that I don't tweet, write, or email anything that I don't want splashed across the pages of the New York Times.
Does it matter who dug them up?
I know, but I think it matters that it's selective. That's what I'm saying. And so some of the tweets are taken out of context. I think in Sarah's explanation, she noted that some of it was counter-trolling. Would I have written anything like that? Absolutely not. But it's not racist for this reason. One, Don, racism, being racist, is not just prejudice, it's prejudice plus power. So one could argue that some of her tweets, even within context, note that she has a prejudice perhaps against white men. But that, in fact, does not make her racist. I don't think she's a racist. I absolutely think we're conflating two conversations.
Does it make her a bigot? Does it make her...
No, I don't think it makes her a bigot either. Again, I think you have to look at the tweets within the context. Could she be prejudiced? Could she have some, not just implicit, but negative bias towards white men in America due to perhaps what she's experienced throughout her life? Probably, absolutely. Does that mean, though, that she is in fact racist? No, because race is prejudice plus power. Could she be prejudiced? Absolutely. But I think we're conflating many different conversations, and we have to be clear about what we're talking about.
Jeong, what do you think? Are these tweets racist?
I think the tweets certainly are racist. Whether Sarah herself is a racist, I think that's a different question, because if you look at her tweets, and in fact, I actually spent quite a bit of time...
Can you separate those two for me? How can...
Well, if I could continue, I actually looked at a whole bunch of her tweets, a lot more than what you just read out loud, and that's quite a bit of time I can't get back, but it's clear that she's a young lady who is very confused, very indiscreet, who is trying to be very funny, but who is failing spectacularly. And you sort of have to feel sorry for her that she somehow went through one of the best universities in the country, Harvard Law, and what she does is she spends her entire time obsessing about white people and saying nasty things about white men and white women. But it's also clear from her remarks that she doesn't think all white people are what she describes, and so there is a certain element of attempting to be humorous, but not actually succeeding. However, if you look at her tweets, and if you actually do look at the context is that she is purposely saying racist things against white people for what she believes is great effect.
Okay, I'm not sure. So how do you separate?
I mean, what I would say about what Simone just said is that I think there is a great deal that is sad here, and what it reflects is what is really sad about identity politics in America in general. That race is your defining characteristic, and if you are somebody who is not white, you get to say all kinds of vile things about white people, and there's no consequence. And I think what is sad here is that here is a young woman who is obviously very smart enough to get into Harvard, and yet she spends all her time saying all these nasty things about white people, as she knows they're at least racially tinged, if not and if not racist. But she goes on doing that because that's how she's been taught.
I got to get Matt in. So Matt, listen, she issued an apology. Her own apology about her old tweets alongside a screenshot of just 2 examples of the types of vitriolic messages she receives. One reads, if I saw you, I would sock you in your lesbian face and shut the F up, you dog-eating bleep. She says she was counter-trolling. So what's wrong with punching back?
Well, I guess we all get a get out of jail card now, because anything anybody has ever been fired for saying or tweeting could be counter-trolling, if that's an acceptable excuse. Look, I'm not a big fan of this mob mentality where we go after things people tweeted 5 years ago and take them down. Having said that, you and I both know that if Matt Lewis had written or said anything remotely like this about another race or sexual orientation, I certainly wouldn't have a job on Monday. I actually think this is a political story as well as a media story. You know, look, I think white people have historically been privileged, but there are a lot of working class white Americans out there. Maybe you're a Vietnam vet, maybe you're struggling with cancer, maybe you're unemployed, your factory went bankrupt, and you are living in Ohio and you're watching somebody working at the New York Times who went to a great college shame you for being white. We wonder why Donald Trump is able to turn all of these folks against us in the media. Well, guess what? If you're a white Republican living in Ohio or Michigan, and you have the idea that the media doesn't like you, isn't this proof that, in fact, that is the case? That the New York Times is hiring somebody who has tweeted hundreds of tweets, like not just a handful like this, would get hired at the New York Times of all places. I think it kind of reinforces, sadly, Donald Trump's message.
I've got to take a break, but I want to continue this, so we're going to go on. But this is the thing. You don't have to respond by Twitter. It always gets you in trouble because there's no context. If you're going to do something like that, then you write an article where there's context, where you can respond to people, and it's just not sitting out there like that. And I do have to say, Matt, I think it's a very good point. If I saw something like that from